Just Lovena, maybe show your face as I introduce you. Lovena, are you in the house? All right, so do I have Brian in the house? Brian Otieno? Yes, I do. Last time, if you remember well, we covered very many areas within a short time, and it was not enough to cover each of those areas properly. Today, we shall try to go into some greater detail on the areas that we covered, because there were still lingering questions, and you do agree that within one session, it is not possible to learn all the things that we need to learn within one evening. So today, what we are going to do is that Brian will cover estate planning, because then estate planning is the antidote or is the cure against succession problems that we normally have. So estate planning is a process by which you say ahead, or you dictate ahead, or you determine, let me use the word determine, you determine ahead, how will I prevent any challenges that may occur when I am gone? How can I plan ahead and have a chance to see during my lifetime how my children can get involved in the running of the properties, in the running of the management of any family-run companies that you may have, and so that I get to see for myself and assess the abilities of my children or my family to be able to run, and sort of I can die having some peace in mind that what I have left behind, I have left with people who can be able to guide. During the course of our practice, we encounter many of these problems whereby many African fathers or parents don't plan their estate ahead. So what happens is that when they die, or before they die, their children are waiting to see them die, then they can just jump on what they have, their hard-earned sweat for years. And then they will, plunder the resources, mismanage. So how can we prevent that from happening? So then there are family-run businesses. What are the benefits of having family-run businesses? What are the rebates you can get under tax law for that? So Brian will cover that. And maybe, Brian, I don't know if Lovena, you can confirm if you are there. Lovena, maybe you can look at wills, writing of wills, essentials of wills, so that for today, we can deal with maybe the definition of what matrimonial property is, what are the wills, and all that. Last time we even handled types of marriages, essentials of marriages, capacity to contract marriages, types of marriages. But because we don't have that much time today, we can concentrate on those two areas, on will writing, essentials of wills, what are the things that we need to put in mind when we are dealing with writing of wills. Thank you, Brian. I've seen you have confirmed that you are there. So we can start with Lovena. If Lovena, you are there and you can hear me, we can begin with writing of wills, essentials of wills, characteristics of wills or features of wills, what is a valid will, and then you can also handle what happens briefly when someone dies intestate, that is without writing a will, types of wills, oral wills and written wills, and codicils. I think you can deal with that, and then maybe for the next 15 minutes, then Brian can come in with planning on the aspects that I've already highlighted for another 15 minutes. Then at around 8:40, we can entertain questions for 10 minutes, and then we can respond for the other 10 minutes, and then we'll call it an evening. Thank you very much and welcome, Lovena. We will start with you. It would seem like I'm not getting Lovena. Can we then start with Brian? Brian, you can handle both areas. Wheel writing, essentials of wheels, types of wheels, and then you can go right ahead to estate planning. You integrate the two, and the family-run businesses or family-owned companies, and then you can have 20 minutes, and then we can have interactions.
Okay.
Yes, I'm on mute, but
Probably please confirm to me that you're able to hear me.
Oh, I can see Lovena. Yes, we are hearing you, Brian, but a bit faintly. Lovena, can you now hear me? Are you in?
Elder,
Yes.
yeah, Lovena is in the meeting, but I've just talked to her. Apparently, her microphone was not coming on, so she's just left the meeting to rejoin. Then you can see whether she'll be able to be heard.
Oh, it's like I'm seeing her name up there.
Yeah, she was in the meeting, but you could not be able to hear her. So she's leaving and rejoining.
All right, then we can start with Brian.
Yeah. Is it better now?
Yes, okay, Brian, you can go ahead.
Okay. I think I'll begin from just saying a very warm welcome to everyone who's joined us for this session. And also to wish everyone a nice learning experience as we discover the hidden gems of succession planning. And now, as you said, and I think it's now times without number. I can use that word on this. That times without number, we have mentioned that there is need for us to catch up with the times, the need for us to live in the realities of our generation, and to realize that things are quickly changing. And it may not be the usual business of children supporting their parents in their old age, and the cycle continues. Right now, if I ask people who have logged in today, by show of hands, people who maybe are in their retirement are being supported by their children, sons or daughters, I guess the numbers may not be what it used to be, because times have changed so much so that it is the children who grow up into adults surviving or depending on their parents. And so there is need for us to organize our estates. There is need for us to put our houses in order, as the Bible would say it, so that we can get to ensure easy and smooth transition, and also alleviate the burden, so to speak, on the upcoming generation. I normally see online people joking that there are those who start, 100 miles from the finishing line, and there are those who start 100 miles, like those who start from zero. I mean, they don't start with anything. In fact, they start on negatives. They start by taking care of the gaps that were left by the old generation. So they're born to a family where there was no proper succession. The land that is family owned is still in the name of the patriarch. There have been 3 or 4 generations after the patriarch died. No one has cared to take out the probate letters so that you transfer the property into the names of the subsequent generations. You were born into a family where, if you show the signs of opulence, maybe you can afford a good house, and maybe you live in our area, say Nairobi. Then there is the notion that you should now be the patriarch of the family. So you should take care of all the fees and education of children that are in that family. You should take care of all the issues about, anyone who has financial needs. They should reach out to you, and you should be very available and willing to provide those resources. And that becomes a challenge because then we do not preserve and we do not hand over to the next generation, but in essence, waste away what we found and waste away our future. So as Elder said, the solution to this problem is to get into the habit of estate planning. What this means is that you have a list of your assets and liabilities, what you own vis-a-vis what you owe, and then organize that which you own, what remains after you've taken away what you owe, in an organized manner. You could use what I've said previously, that you can use the 3 common tools. Wills are very easy to write. And as elders asked me to speak about essentials of will writing, we just need 2 things. There are formalities. The formalities of writing a will are just 2. It should be written, it should be signed, and of course, witnessed. So there is a form, like the formality of a will is that it should be in written form or of course spoken, and I will speak to that. And then what speaks to the validity is that written wills, they should be signed and witnessed. Just those 2. It doesn't take a lot to just sit down and maintain a list of assets, because organizing a estate ensures that you take care of your interest in the event of any eventuality. We never know, when the Lord may come calling, or the vagaries of nature may cut short our existence. But in the event of such unexpected cases, it should be easy for the family that remains after to know where to start from. If you have a list of assets and that you have maintained, a tool, a will, a trust, it is easy for them to just take the next steps, because the law prescribes what should be done in such cases. However, if we leave our estates without planning, the consequence is that there may be possibility of loss of assets, and daily you see the Unclaimed Financial Assets Authority publishing details of assets that are unclaimed. And the reason is that someone somewhere did not publicize or make it known that he is the person who has beneficial interest in an asset, and in case of his demise, the people who are supposed to be beneficially interested in that asset were not disclosed to the institution. Yeah, you have seen sometimes squatters having a field day with the land because the owner of that land died. And the reason why I'm saying that we need to move from the old way of living and catch up with the modern times. It's only in the old days where you would have someone with a treasure digging up the ground and storing it there. And if you're a good Bible student, you know the parable, of this man who probably rents a piece of land to plow it. And then while he's plowing, he discovers a very precious treasure in it. And then after discovering that, what he does is, because he doesn't want people to discover, he closes it up. And then he goes selling every precious thing that he has just to get enough money to come and buy this property that has the precious treasure that he's gotten. And the context of that parable was that the context of that parable is that those days you didn't have like the established institutions that were dealing with estate planning and estate management. And it was not common for people to keep money, in banks and financial markets like we have nowadays. But today we have privileged to have various institutions that offer these services, professionals. If, for example, you have a trust, then you can appoint professional trustees who can help you with preserving and maintaining your assets. And of course, it also ensures that your assets are protected, from certain proceedings like bankruptcy. As I said, that trusts have one very interesting advantage in that many times trusts, property that is held under trust, are not subject to proceedings in matters of bankruptcy. But of course, the details around it, and maybe we may need to discuss further on the side. But as a matter of principle, if you own assets and you transfer those assets into a trust or you settle them into a trust, then should your creditors come calling, they can only be entitled to what is in your name and not what is in another entity like a trust or a company, because the law presumes that the individual and the trust or the company are two separate entities. And what belongs to the trust cannot be construed or taken to be belonging to the individual. And of course, as I've said in another occasion, that it is important for us to use this, especially people who are heavily leveraged. I know in Adventist circles, we do not encourage people to be in debt. I know of a statement, one of our inspired writings that says they should avoid debt like plague. But I also know that many of the instances, many times, some of the things that we need may not be easily available to us on cash basis. And this may lead us into situations where get into debt, we acquire items on credit terms. And if you're heavily leveraged, or if your business is heavily leveraged, then having a trust could be, family trust in particular, could be an important tool to help you in preserving assets that essentially will be used for the benefit of the next generation. So in the few last minutes that I have, and just summarize what I've been talking about all this while, there are three major estate planning tools that are commonly used. There may be others, but will writing is the simplest and the most common. And what all you need to do is just have a list of your assets, and then also have a list of your liabilities. And then you net off so that the net assets that form part of your estate should be what goes into your will. Because if you have all the assets in your estate that is in your name, But then you also have a lot of liabilities. Before we do the distribution upon your demise, we will have to settle all the debts that you left, all the liabilities that you held. Because we can only distribute if we have, and if you are heavily in debt and there's nothing in your name, then of course those whom you owe will have a priority, so that we only distribute to your beneficiaries and dependents what remains after we have settled all your obligations. So as you write your will, you should take care of that. And then for that will to be valid, as I've said, just very simple requirements. Have it in writing, sign it, and have someone witness as you sign. At least 2 independent witnesses, that is people who don't have an interest in what you have distributed in the will, and competent witnesses, that mean that they have a sound mind, and they have an understanding of what you're doing, or the importance of, will writing. And then aside from that, of course, because of what we've seen happening in the recent times, wills have been heavily contested. It leads to waste of time because you have to apply to court, wait for a whole 6 months or similar durations to get the grant confirmed. That is when now you have the legal right to distribute assets. So there are those challenges. It takes a lot of time. So then people have moved into other things like trusts, which offers not just benefits upon demise, but also during the lifetime of the person who creates a trust, what I call the settlor. And as I've said, of course, other benefits is also the bankruptcy proceedings. It's a shield from bankruptcy or insolvency proceedings for the individual bankruptcy. But I've also said that it also gives you the benefit of bringing on board professionals as trustees, so that you're able to entrust your property with people who actually understand, the financial markets. They understand, the secret of compounding, or the power of compounding interest. And they understand all these things so that they're able to manage your assets prudently and efficiently. And then, of course, family companies are also good when it comes to profit-making adventures or businesses, because you get to engage, depending, of course, on what you do in business. And because of that separation between the individual and the entity, you avoid cases of, wasting away that which you have, especially when it comes to urgent demands unplanned for. And of course, companies generally also have various tax benefits, especially family-owned companies. When they're settling property like land or shares into that property, that family-owned company, there's certain tax incentives that are available for families. Yeah, when for example, you are the father in that family and you're transferring assets into a company that you have 100% shareholding, together with your spouse or children, there are certain tax incentives in that respect. So these 3 assets, I can see, Elder, you're already signaling me to stop. I'll stop in the next 1 minute. These 3 tools are very important and are very common. And so it is important for us to embrace this practice. Let us have organized estates, and let us have a mindset of investment, so that we don't leave burdens, but blessings to those who are coming. And as I said, I always say that it is a good man, a wise man, who leaves an inheritance to his children's children. As a wise man today, your inheritance, or what you have, should be able to sustain your child and your child's child or grandchild. Yeah. If I was to ask today, how many of us can comfortably say that today, as I stand, if I was to pass on or pass the baton to my generation to come, I am sure that inheritance, if properly managed, can sustain even the next generation. That is a challenge I want to leave us with. Let us embrace estate planning, and let us be clear that we ensure that nothing is lost. Because if we leave our properties unattended, and there is no one who is either nominated or appointed to act on behalf of the owners, then we risk losing our assets to the government, to squatters, and to people who have no interest in our family's welfare at the expense of our family that really needs, the things that we fought for and we accumulated in our lifetime. So I pray that we will take this interesting nuggets, and I hope that we will have questions at the end of the sharing. God bless you.
Thank you, Brian, very much for your clarity. I'm struggling a little bit with an unstable network, but I think we can hear each other most of the time. The reason I was interjecting at that point was so that you could give more focus in the second segment of the presentation. When you come back, you can talk more about instruments through which estate planning is effected, what goes into estate planning benefits, and in comparison with wills and disabuse people about the value of wills you're about to die, especially Africans. How can we change that attitude? What are the benefits to be gained by writing wills? Now, when does the law, the succession law, come and take over? I mean, we regulate
I think elders broke off, but he was
All right, looks like he's been kicked out of the meeting and the network is really not working well. So what I'll do, let's invite Lovena to take over with the presentation. Oh, you're back. Okay. He is still hanging. Lovena, you can come in.
Can hear me? As Lovena comes in, Lovena, you can do a few comments on maybe highlight areas that you think may have been left out by Brian, or emphasize that which he has, or place some emphasis on his presentation. And then we'll come back. Maybe I'll give you 7 minutes or so to react, to emphasize, to clarify. And then we can come back and concentrate more on estate planning as we, for another maybe 5 minutes, Brian, after Lovena, and then we can entertain questions for another 7 minutes, and then we come back. Thank you.
So can you hear me now? Someone can confirm that I'm clear?
Yes, yes.
Okay, so I'll just add additional pointers onto what Brian has presented. First of all, a will only takes effect after the death of the testator. And that means that at any point in the lifetime of the testator, they can make any adjustments or changes to the will, or they can totally revoke it. So it's a personal right of the person making wills to make any changes or any adjustments to the will. So what goes into a will? So number one, the person who is called an executor, who usually takes care of the interest of the testator once the testator has gone. So the executor typically will implement the wishes of the deceased upon the death of the deceased, of course, in accordance to the contents of the will. So also there's appointment of any guardians to any subsisting children that are left, or any beneficiaries of the deceased. The details of the bequests, so any gifts, of course, to close beneficiaries or family members, and any other gifts to any other person they intend to. So a will, of course, is something that should be voluntarily done, and no coercion should be there. And the testator can bequeath his property to any person he wishes. Now, the law has a requirement that in the event that the testator does not bequeath anything to the family, the close beneficiaries or family members, then it will come into play to give reasonable gifts or bequests. The law calls them bequests to the close family members or beneficiaries of the deceased person. So, as Brian communicated, it must be witnessed by 2 or more, and this also applies to oral wills. So, just something a bit on oral wills. Oral wills only take effect when they are made 3 months prior the death of the testator. And in the event that the will is more than 3 months, then it cannot take effect. It cannot be valid. So I'll mention something about what does not get into a will. So what kinds of property cannot be willed by a testator? So in our last presentation, we talked about types of properties. There were jointly owned properties and individually owned properties. So there are certain kinds of properties that when are jointly owned, they can't be willed out. So what usually happens is once the one joint owner of the property passes, the property should automatically then pass to the other jointly, to the other joint owner of the property, who is the other jointly owned, joint owner of the property that is still alive. So these properties are called joint tenancies or jointly owned property. So this includes matrimonial property as well, property that is owned by spouses in a marriage. We also have trust property that are called trust assets that cannot be passed under a will. Then we have proceeds of insurance or retirement benefits that are supposed to be bequeathed to a named beneficiary. So where there is someone who was nominated as a beneficiary in any retirement benefits or insurance, then it can't be willed out. Also, you can't will out illegally or immorally acquired property. Of course, now that the force of the law will come into play, and the law won't allow any criminal activities to be propagated in a will. So also, of course, assets that are outside Kenya cannot be willed in a property unless, so there's a separate will that will comply with this, that of course now are in compliance with the laws of the country that those property are located in. So I'll just hand over to Brian to talk a bit on the estate planning as well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Lovena, for those clarifications. Brian, I don't know if you can include a little further to what Lovena has talked about on issues to do with the duties and responsibilities of administrators. of estates of the deceased, because so many times I think it's very rampant, and maybe even our members have experienced that within their own spheres of operations, or intermeddle with the running of the estates. And what does Succession Act provide for in such circumstances? What should people do? Then you can go back and refocus. But then before Brian comes in, are there any questions so that Brian maybe and Lovena can answer them as we get to the last segment of the presentation on estate planning? Maybe even those questions may inform what else he may include in his remaining part of the presentation. You can raise your hand if you have any issue. You can write messages on the messaging side so that we can be able to deal with them or give them attention. I'll allow a few seconds to see if there are any hands. It looks like our class has understood everything. All right. Brian, maybe let's hope that the Holy Spirit makes what other concerns members have that are not raising. But can you come back maybe and see if you can attend to what I just raised, and then talk more about estate planning and how we can avoid some of these issues that we have on a daily basis in the courts and everywhere that estate planning could have solved, Asante sana, and the benefits of estate planning. Brian? Okay, Brian, are you there? There's a case that you posted on the message, the Njenga Karume case. It is quite a learning experience for all of us on the limits of wills and when can wills be challenged, if the wills are unfair and such like things. Okay, sometimes are you struggling with your camera or microphone? Okay, Brian, I can see you on now.
Yes, Elder. Sorry, I stepped out a bit to attend to an issue. But pardon me. So the question is just so that I can comment on the case that I posted on the chat.
Yes, part of what I was saying is that maybe you can enhance your presentation further with information on advantages of estate planning and how they can cure some of these problems we have with succession issues, and what are the limits under a will. Are there anything like unfair wills? And that is the rider I was using, or the basis to say that maybe you can also give comments on the Njenga Karume case, was a public matter, and you can maybe just talk about a little bit to illustrate challenges of wills done in a certain.
All right. I think I get you. So yeah, I think just to start from there where elders left, it is possible to have certain wills challenge or set aside by the courts, where it is proved that some of the factors that can nullify a will were existing. For example, there is bias or unfairness in terms of the allocation of distributions, where the will unfairly allocates a portion of the estate to one side as opposed to, giving an equitable share of the inheritance to members of the family. Yeah, I know a story of a family where the man was polygamous, and polygamous men, as they age, I don't know how it works, but their favorites most of the times are the last wives. I'm not a polygamous man, by the way, but somehow I know. Don't ask me why or how. So in this family, the man had 3 wives. And of course, in his sunset days, he, of course, became ill. And of course, the nursing and the care that comes with his old age were most of the times given by the last family for obvious reasons, as I've said, for obvious reasons. Now, at the point when he felt sick, he was a man of means, so his family decided to fly him to overseas so that he can get the best treatment that the world could offer. And once again, it is the last wife and the family that organized all this and were around him in his sunset days. So when they discovered that, Mzee was very unwell and could not possibly make it back to the country, they decided to fly a lawyer, one of the top lawyers in Kenya, to go and write the will for him in his sickbed. And of course, the lawyer was very gracious to have that opportunity, quickly got his passport, flew miles away to write a will. And upon the demise of the old man, the will was produced in court. And it turns out that the will unfairly allocated all the prime properties and the high-end cars and the best that could be found in the estate to, your guess as good as mine, the last family. Well, what would the first and second wives and their children do in the face of outright unfairness in how the properties were treated? It is normal to have maybe slight variations or inequities, because of course we're not all the same. But it can't be the same thing where all the properties in the high-end estates of Nairobi, properties in Karen, properties in Runda, properties in all the high-end estates only go to one family. The first 2 families only got what they used as their matrimonial homes, and probably plots that were undeveloped or other things that didn't really appeal and didn't meet the test of fairness. So when this matter was taken before a judge, he didn't take what required a lot of expertise to discern that there was manifest inequality or in the assets in the estate. So as we write wills, we should be careful about this. Let us try to be as reasonable as possible. And actually, in that case, the reason that the court nullified the will for was that it appeared that the mzee was too sick to write a will, and that it appeared to the court that it is this last wife who flew a lawyer of her preference to write a will according to her dictates and terms. You know, so again, don't have to wait until you're very old to write a will. You can start now. You know, you can always amend a will. We have a document called a codicil. It's just, you know, legal terms sometimes can be difficult, but codicil is just a big word for a small thing called an amendment to a will. Yeah, it is just a document that you use to amend the will. If you probably acquired another property, get additional assets, you just do a codicil. Yeah, to just say we include this property as part of the will. So again, we should, don't wait so long, into your old days to write a will, because then sometimes, as it happened in the story I was narrating now, you may get to a point where you have no control of what goes on. And then, some people who may have vested interests may hijack the process to their own benefit, which is not desirable. Yeah. So some of the reasons we may have, cases of fraud, yeah, or undue influence, yeah, where, like in that story, it appeared to the court that the last wife had unduly influenced the husband and the lawyer to write the will according to her own preferences. So those are some of the things that may lead to a will being nullified. And that's just a story that I'm making. And now I have 2 minutes before I usher in questions. I have said, of course, times without number, that wills are good, but for well-ordered and well-disciplined families that can speak in one voice, because experience and history has proven that wills have been contested where families get to differ on opinions, and it has actually been a recipe or a reason why families have been split apart, and acrimony and bitterness has been sown in families. So of course, as Christians, you and I know that it is not good for the health of the family to have acrimony and disagreements. And of course, that is why legal innovation has brought other instruments like wills. Yeah, just to comment on the case I posted, for the first time, we have a judgment where the courts have upheld, trusts, and given that a very well reasoned and elaborate explanation of what a trust actually is. Because previously there were lots of doubts about, trusts are just creations of lawyers. They have got no clear legal basis of foundation. But I think with this judgment, and of course with the laws that we have developed over time, we have seen the benefits. Now, someone may ask, because you've also seen in the papers and the reports around us, that trustees could also be compromised. Trustees could also misuse or waste parts of the estate. That is true, but I think the law has come of age and been alive to the realization that trustees could also be compromised. So in 2021, the law was amended to allow that now we can have what we call trust protectors, people who have oversight role or supervisory powers over trusts. And it could be the person who is creating the trust himself, so that you don't become helpless in the face of rogue trustees who are unprofessional trustees who want to waste away, the trust. And that's why I say that the highlight of the case that I posted, and of course, if you have time, you may read it for yourself. The highlight is that trustees have a fiduciary duty towards beneficiaries. A trustee must administer this trust solely in the interest of the trust beneficiaries and cannot place his or her interest in conflict with the beneficiaries. Trustees should not profit personally from their role as trustees, other than the fees which they may receive for their trusteeship. So again, that tells you, that the law has come of age to really take care of some of the challenges that you may see. So I think previously trusts had very huge tax benefits. You could, take distributions out of the trust, up to 10 million shillings for medical or maybe for building your first house, you know, without taxation. But I think those were eroded. And of course, I don't want to sound political, but you know where I'm headed. You know what I'm thinking. So I will not say it because we are here. But some very important tax benefits were eroded, but I think it is still a good tool, especially in respect of preservation of family wealth. And then finally, if you're then doing income generating activities or revenue generating activities, and of course companies should be your darling. You know, family owned companies should be your number one choice, because then they provide a balance of continuity and of course tax incentives, especially for family owned companies. Yeah, and the list is long, so I don't want to spend there on, but I want to leave it there and probably ask that we share questions on things that probably you want clarification upon, and just maybe to mention that I will have to drop off at 9 p.m. because of some pre-engagement that I had committed to. But I am opening it up. I'm sure I'm not usurping the powers of Elder Dismas or Elisha to ask people to give questions. I think it should be the time, but you can guide elders.
I want to thank my two able lawyers, Lovena Omore and Brian Odiwor Otieno, for a very, very beautiful, clear, and simple presentations. We have 7 minutes before 9, but of course, I know Elder will have announcements and guidelines on the next time. If there is no question, let me give 5 seconds if there's any question or any concern. Then we can give it back to Elder Elisha to conclude the evening for us. It's been good to be with you. Today we started a bit late, but you know, these things happen sometimes. But thank you so much for the interest in this program and in this presentation. It does equip our church members, and it's another way that this church can grow by being equipped. The Lord bless you all abundantly, and thank you for your patience. Until next time, we'll be guided by Elder when again we can come. The law is very wide. There are many areas. This is just one aspect that we have been handling. There are other areas like pensions. What do you do if you have little children and you want to write a will? Do you create a trust? What do you do? All those things. We could only highlight areas that I think are salient in this area of law for now. So we wish you a good evening and God bless you so much. Over to you, Elder Elisha.
Thank you very much, Elder and the team. We appreciate you for the very wonderful presentation. Yes, this month we are giving emphasis on the law. So this same team we have here will be here next week and the next, at least for the next 3 weeks before the camp meeting. So at least we'll have enough time. If you have questions, if you have things to be, addressed, or something that probably you're feeling like it's not being addressed, you have the time to share that. I appreciate so much the attendance of non-Glory Landers. Besides the Glory Landers, we have people like James, Johnston Munyao, Muririo Okech. We have quite a number of people that actually joined who are not Glory Landers. Thank you so much for joining, and we welcome you. Please join again next Thursday when we'll have this, same time from 7:30 to 9 p.m. And again, apologies for tonight for starting very, very late. But we'll ensure we'll start on time and finish on time. Let's have a word of prayer as we bring this to a close. Most gracious God in heaven, we thank you so much for your goodness. Thank you for being with us through this presentation. I thank you so much for Lovena and Brian, who have shared their experiences in this field, and Elder Dismas for moderating the session. I pray that you'll be with them. Give them your wisdom so that even the next presentation, they'll bring us more of the knowledge that members require to have as we live in our families. Keep us safe until next time. It is our prayer, trusting and believing in Jesus.